Hi everyone, I'm Marilyn from Trembling Art, and today we're going to talk about mixing pastel colors. Now I know it's an easy mix. You just add a lot of white to your paint and you get all your pastel colors. But, and there's always a but, you don't necessarily get the color that you want. Sometimes you end up with wanting a blue sky, but it looks more purple, or you want this pretty pink rose, but it too looks more bluish or purplish. And I'm going to show you why and how to avoid that. So we're going to start off with mixing some of our blues. So I'm going to add blobs of white here. Oops, a little bit too much. So move this over here. So we're going to start off with Ultramarine Blue because it's a very common color. Most people, even beginners, have Ultramarine Blue. I'm using Liquitex Basics to do this demonstration. It's a student grade paint, but it's still light fast and works really well if you're wanting to paint in layers. I'm going to take the blue actually and mix it in to the white. And because ultramarine is a very intense color, you start with little bits and build up. If not, you're going to end up with more of a blue than a pastel. So mix it well. Always mix your paint well, unless you're going for a variegated color. So now we have a light blue. And I use this, it's a cheap watercolor book, and I use it to keep my mixing recipes, so I know what colors I mixed to achieve a certain color. As you go along in your painting journey, you'll automatically know what colors to mix. But in the beginning, it's really good to have this. It's also good later on when you mix a color unintentionally and you love it, and you want to remember how to mix it. Swatch it out in this book and write it down. So I did this earlier today, and this is the Ultramarine Blue. And remember, acrylic paints dry a little darker, and this looks much lighter on the gray than it actually does dry it on my book. So and what you can tell from this ultramarine blue and white, it is pastel color, but it has a purple tinge. So if you were to put that in your sky, you'd have a slightly purple sky, and that will work for some skies, but it may not be the one you want. So next we're going to try out Phthalo Blue. Phthalo Blue is also a very intense color, so you only need a little bit to add into your white. And you can tell these are both blue, they both look dark, but you're going to get a different shade, a different tint, I guess, of a blue when you mix it in with white. You can already tell the difference. And I may have used too much blue, but you'll get the idea. See, now we have a totally different color. And now you can see the purple more in this when you compare it with this one. And even when it dries, it's a slightly different color. And I'm going to spread those out a little bit because I don't want them to dry in my book with too much of a bump. There. And now our next color, next blue actually that I'm going to do is one that I use most often to make skies, like a daytime sky, a blue sky, and that is Cerulean Blue. So we'll put A little bit there. I hate wasting paint. You take a little bit. I might need more white for this, but we'll see how it goes. I was going to use my glass palette for this demonstration, but with all the lighting, you get too much of a glare. Even this palette paper has a bit of a glare. And I prefer to mix on gray because you get a better idea of the actual true color than you would on a white. So now this is a very pale blue, and you can see it compared to these two. What a different tone or tint it is. We'll add a little bit. See, it's darker again when it dries, right? So this is why you may not get the color sky you want, even though you just mixed your blue and white. And I got my hands covered in paint. So you have to be careful which color blue that you use to achieve the color that you're looking for. This is a nice, probably a nice bright day. You would use that in the sky. Maybe a cooler evening shade, and this would probably go better with a sunset or an almost, you know, the twilight sky. Next we'll move on to our pinks, because pink is a color you would use in sunsets, flowers, and depending on what you use, you may not get the effect that you're going for. So we're going to try the first one with Cadmium Red Light. And this color is almost an orange. It's not quite orange, but it's almost an orange. So we're going to mix it in with our white. And if you were going for, this might be okay for sunset in the evening. But if you were going for a rose, I mean, there are some roses that would be this color. It's almost a peachy color. But if you were going for a pink rose, you wouldn't use this color. Or at least I wouldn't use this color. Not for a pink rose. It is definitely almost a peachy pink. You can see, and I added on top, it will dry, like I said, darker. And in between mixing, make sure you wipe your palette knife and your brush so you don't contaminate your other paints. So next we're going to use this Quinacridone Magenta, and this is a color that I really like. It's one of my favorites. So we're going to, it makes beautiful purples too when mixed with blue. So we're going to mix it in with our white. Now we're getting a pale pink. It's a beautiful color, but it does lean slightly towards purple, which is fine if that's the color that you're going for. It's very different. Not too much on there. It's very different than the cadmium, as you can see. It's a very bright pink. And we'll swatch it on here so you can see. There is, some of these colors dry much darker and some only a little darker. I guess it depends on the pigment. And again, if you're using a new color you haven't used before, it's better to swatch it. Whenever I buy a new tube of paint, I always swatch it out and I mix it with a few other colors that I normally would use, just to see what it looks like. So you don't want, you know, to mix a big blob of color and put it on your painting and realize that's not what you wanted. So this one is Napthol Crimson. Oh, way too much of that paint. So we won't mix that much. Oh, that's not... wipe off my palette knife. So we're going to take a little bit and start with that. Might need a little more. And it's better to start off with too little than too much. And some days it's easier for me to mix than others, depending on the shaking. There we go. Now, I mean, you could keep adding the red to the white until you get the color you want. This is a very pale pink. I think I have it actually mixed a little darker in my book, but I wanted to give you a comparison. It is much darker than I have it mixed in my book. But we'll see how dark that dries by the time we're finished. I'll come back and show you. But that would be a good one for a rose, and you can always add, like we can add another tiny touch of the red and mix that in to get a deeper color. Now it's deeper. And you can keep mixing until you get whatever color you want. I have a whole series of videos on how to mix tints and tones and shades of various colors, blues and reds and greens, and I'll link them in the description for you if you want to go a deeper dive into how to mix certain colors. Next we'll try yellow, and oops, trying to get my paint out, and I'll show you sometimes you don't even get a yellow when you mix yellow, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So we're going to start with cadmium yellow medium, and I chose the medium because the light was so light you couldn't see it on camera. So we'll start off with that. It's a lovely yellow color, nice for daisies. And this is really light. I'll get my pencil, my paintbrush. It will dry darker, of course. And you can make it darker than that, of course. You know, if you need it for an intense color yellow of a flower or a sunset in the evening. Now, next we're going to use yellow ochre, and this is the one I was talking about when I said you don't always get yellow. Yellow ochre is a yellow that's an earthy tone, and you can still get a pastel or a pastel-y color, I guess, but it's not going to be this yellow, right? So I'll show you. It's still a very useful color. Actually, yellow ochre is a very useful color all around. Maybe I should do a video on the best colors to buy when you're starting out, because artist paint is very expensive and you don't want to waste your money. And you can mix just about anything using the 3 primaries, but when you're starting out, and you don't have the full understanding of pigments and color mixing, you might want to buy some. So this, as you can see, is totally different. It's more of a beigey color. Which is very useful in a lot of things. It's an earthy, warmer color. I mean, if you mix it with a lot of white, you may even be able to use it for highlights on your yellow. Because highlights, most highlights anyway, should never be pure white. Except for the, you know, the sparkle in the eye and the brightest highlights. Okay, so next we're going to use lemon yellow, which on its own is a very bright color, and you can see it kind of leans towards green. So when you mix it with too much there, when you mix it with your white, you're going to get a cool greenish yellow. A little bit more. Again, very different from this, and even different from my original cadmium mix. So, I mean, all colors are the same way. You can get your purples, and dioxazine purple will give you a different pastel than, say, a violet, or a deep violet, or violet red, or even a blue violet. They will all give you different colors. So you're best off, if you're planning out a painting and you're not sure about the color, have a book like this, do some swatches, figure out what you want. Now, as you can see, the Phthalo Blue one, I mix it a little darker, and it's drawing even darker, as you can see. And the same way with the Napthol Crimson, I made it a little lighter than the original version. So you can add as much white as you need to get the color you want. If you go too pastel-y, too light, you can add in a little bit of your color. Do it little bits at a time. And play around with it until you get what you want. And I hope you enjoyed learning about pastels and how to mix various colors. And please check out my other videos I link below on color mixing. And if you liked the video, please click the like button and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.